In this episode of What's Your Story with Mike Lindstrom and Scott Leese, we sit down with the founder and CEO, former CEO of Spiritual Gangster clothing line. You've probably seen Spiritual Gangster on clothing line. Well, that's Ian and his wife started that company years ago, and they've had many, many other ventures since then. Oh my goodness. This podcast interview was crazy. So obviously in podcasts, you want to have a good, even exchange of information. And then we asked Ian the question, what's your story? Which we always do at the beginning. And he kept going and going and going. And you know what? The stories got better and better. He talks about hanging out with John Mayer, partying in Vegas, all these crazy stories. And I've known Ian for a long time. These are stories I had never heard before. So for him to sit on our couch and be extremely private and authentic about some of the rise and fall and back up again, the rise of what's gone on in his life in the last 5 years was truly special for me, not just as a friend, but as a podcast interviewer, to watch somebody sit there and just be so real in an interview. And again, that's what Scott and I pride ourselves with. What's your story is. You never know what you're going to get when you sit on that chair and we ask you that question, what's your story? You're going to love this one with Ian Lopatin. It's everyone, Mike Lindstrom. Welcome back. What's your story? Next episode, my man, co-host, Scott Leese. How you doing, Scott?
Good morning.
You ready for today's guest?
Ready.
This guy,
Super excited,
I can't wait
actually.
to tell you about this guy. So let's frame this up real quick. So Ian, we call him the Spiritual Gangster, Lopatin. Has been a dear friend of mine, also a recovering attorney, fellow recovering attorney like myself, founder, Spiritual Gangster, spiritual in so many different ways. We're going to get into his story, things he's done around the world, philanthropy, everything that he's done around the world to basically influence the brand, but to create a different level of awareness. Sometimes we call frequencies. That's one of my favorite quotes. He talks about failure.
It's a frequency.
It's just a frequency. So we're going to hear about that today, and we're going to get into his story. Ian, Spiritual Gangster, thanks for coming today, my man.
Glad to be here.
So the first question we ask everyone is, what's your story? Tell us the abbreviated version. Let's get into some stuff.
So thanks for tuning in. And, everyone's stories, it's a journey. It's never a straight line. I grew up in Detroit. My father was a lawyer. My mom had some health problems. And because of her health problems, she had narcolepsy and cataplexy. I got exposed to a lot of alternative medicine as a kid. My childhood doctor was this guy, Dr. Goodhart, who invented applied kinesiology, and he was the Olympic doctor. There's a friend of my mom's, this guy, Dr. John Upledger, who invented craniosacral therapy, and he would come work with my mom. She was friends with people like Brian Weiss. So I was always exposed to all this alternative. Now that's becoming more mainstream. My mom would have yoga teachers come in for a whole block, like from Swami session on his ashram, and she'd have yoga teachers in the back of the room. And at that, I wasn't really into it at that point. I thought she was a little, I mean, I don't want to say crazy, but just it was not mainstream at the time.
But it stuck with you.
It just was a seed that kind of was in and kind of became a big part of who I am today.
Yeah.
I went to school in Nashville at Vanderbilt, and then I worked at the White House for Clinton. And after college, my dad said, look, I'll pay for law school. At least I know you won't be pumping gas for a living. So I applied from San Diego to Seattle, and I drove up the West Coast, and I ended up choosing California. And I went to law school at UCLA and graduated, and then was an entertainment lawyer briefly. And, when I was at the point when I was in law school, I went to visit my mom in Florida, and she gave me a yoga book. And I never had a yoga book, and I'm flying back, and I get on the airplane, and I'm sitting kind of in the exit row by the window seat, and a guy and his wife come sit next to me, and he's wearing a satin jacket with a tiger on the back. So it's like a 5-hour flight, like 4 hours into the flight. I take out my yoga book. I start reading it. He goes, you do yoga? I said, yeah. He goes, I'm Bikram. I said, you want to see my book? He goes, I got my own book, 2 million copies. So I was like, okay, God. I landed from in LA. I went straight to Borders Books. The Borders bookstore still existed at that time. I was living in Westwood by UCLA, and I picked up Bikram's book, and I would go to yoga with him before and then after law school. And then I was watching yoga boom in LA. This was probably, the late 90s, and yoga was big in LA and New York, and it was anywhere else in the world. So we would come to Arizona on vacations, and I'd go and find the best yoga studio in Phoenix. And it literally was like in the basement of the Motel 6. It was like, this is the best place.
It's the best place, yeah.
I wrote a business plan. I used to law school. I could take a lot of business school classes. I wrote a business plan on a chain of yoga studios. I ended up quitting my law job. When I was a lawyer, I mean, I just was like, They gave you like 6-month days to start. I started the last possible day. So when I started, they didn't have an office for me. So they had like 5 floors of this tower in Century City. So they put me in like the floor with all the partners. Day one, I took my name tag off the desk. I would go to yoga during the work. I'd leave my suit coat on in my office. I'd come back later and pick it up. So I knew I wasn't going to be a lawyer for long. I just had to figure out like what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So in 2000, we moved out here and we opened At One Yoga. And at the time, no one played music in yoga. So we really invented yoga to music. There was a guy in LA who I became friends with, Steve Ross, who was a teacher of mine, and we did some retreats, but he was playing like hip hop rap music. So I started incorporating that into the classes. So, yoga was taught maybe to like Indian chanting at the end, but I would use hip hop rap music with a really big beat, and I could get the entire room to move like a school of fish. So I taught for 13 years all over the world. We would take trips to Machu Picchu, to Italy. I taught at like Bonnaroo, Rothbury, and I'd have live music like Michael Franti with like 3,000 people in the grass all doing yoga together. And a friend of mine one day after class came up to me and she's like, "You're like a gangster." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "A spiritual gangster." I was like, "That's brilliant." And we started making t-shirts, my wife and I, and we sold them in the yoga studios.
And that's all it was. It was just a t-shirt.
It was a t-shirt. And it just said Spiritual Gangster. And so when we sold the yoga business to Lifetime Fitness. And we're like, okay, what should we do next? And Spiritual Gangster was more of like an expensive hobby. My wife was designing it. Our kids were tagging it at the kitchen table. And it was, kind of like a couple $100,000 a year business that was costing us, $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
And we're like, what should we do? And we decided to turn that into a business. So we grew that business up to about $30 million. My wife was the creative director. I was the CEO. I then became the chairman. And, about 2 years ago, I ended up stepping away from Spiritual Gangster. There had a lot of stuff going on at the time with me. Our daughter, who's 27, she had breast cancer. She had a double mastectomy, and just a lot of stuff coming up. We had some financial things that we were doing, and I was in a lot of suffering. That's basically the way I could share that.
Yeah.
So I ran into a friend of mine. So I went to Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny about 7 years ago. I got invited by Tony to be his guest, and my mom lived in Boca. He was in Palm Beach. So I was like, great, I'll go see my mom and then I'll go check this thing out.
Yep.
Between when I got invited and going down there, my mom passed away. So I was at this thing in Florida, and Tony Robbins played this audio of these 2 Indian teachers, Preetaji and Krishnaji, who are the founders of Ekam. And there was this meditation. It was like, bless your ancestors, bless your parents. And I just fell apart. I went as far as I could away from it. But I was like, I got to find these people. He talked about them finding the drummer from Def Leppard, the one-armed drummer, giving what's called Diksha. So my friend who was at the program with me, John Jay, who's a big famous radio host, we're like, we got to find the Def Leppard drummer. Never did it occur to us, we got to find the gurus. So a couple years later, John Jay found the Def Leppard drummer. And then a couple friends of mine who are doctors who I've known for 25 years, they went to India. And they were pretty enlightened people. She was already. He was majorly a mess the last time I'd seen him. He had 5,000 doctors reporting directly up to him, had a biggest business of medical radiology. He's the number one user of AI in medicine. But he was like, had almost died of a heart attack. He was suicidal. He was a mess. And then I went to lunch with him, and she looked incredible and he looked great. I'm like, James, what did you do? And he's like, well, I went to India. And my wife, I came back from lunch and she's like, how was lunch? I said, I'm going to India. I didn't ask what the program was about. I just knew he was in such a great state and I was in a place of massive suffering.
Yeah.
So I go to India, and it's 2-week program, and it can go up to a month. And my friend's like, I did the first 2 weeks. I'm going to fly out if you want to come and stay. I'm like, I'm not coming. I'm not staying another 2 weeks. So I was there for about 10 days. When I got there, I didn't realize it was a silent retreat. So no talking, no phones, nothing. And after 10 days, I was going to be my 51st birthday over there. And after like 10 days there, I called my wife. I said, I know what I want for my birthday. She's like, what do you want? I said, I need to stay here and finish. So wow. I did the whole month, and I came back and I was in a really great place. Like I felt like, they really teach you that, the things that I learned mostly is there's only 2 states you can live in. You could be in a suffering state, which is fear, anxiety, worry, you're perceiving lack, or you could be in a beautiful state or a non-suffering state where you see abundance, you
Yeah.
flow, but there is no third state. So if you don't know what state you're in a suffering state. And what
Yep.
I realized when I got to India, I thought it was like, let me get rid of this guy, let me get rid of this deal, let me get rid of this, and I'll be great. And it's not like this guy or this guy. It's when you're pointing at this
Right.
guy, you got
Three
three
fingers
fingers
point
at
back.
yourself.
Yeah.
So I realized, pretty quickly that my own thinking was the cause of all my suffering. And the way they do it in India is they teach you it. So the intellectual stuff's pretty easy. And then they say I see my suffering, and then you get the intellectual part. And the second part is I understand the cause of my suffering, which is brutal because you get the intellectual knowledge and then you go through these processes to kind of see how you're doing this in your life to other people. Then most importantly, you're doing it to yourself. And then the last part is I am free. So they'll at the end of every week, you have one night where they give you the week's teaching. The guru sits with you. He gives you a transmission, which is like the most incredible psychedelic experience I've ever experienced on nothing. And then you stay up all night and you meditate. And then at the end of it, you're like, I would go back and I'd sleep for like 8 hours, just like my whole body would reset.
All right, hold on. I got to jump in real quick. There's a lot to unpack on this. You got a lot of questions, I'm
Of
sure.
course.
Right?
Yeah.
Can I start?
Yeah,
can I start with one thing? So, Bikram. If I remember right, 26 postures, 90 minutes.
Yep.
Okay. How do you go from Bikram to hip hop in the studio?
So
first of all, I want to hear.
Bikram was sort of like, he got me into my body. He had a very interesting way of doing it. He's like an Indian guy. He's wearing a Speedo. He's got his gold Rolex.
You know who that is, right?
Yes.
25 Rolls Royce. He's infamous now. There's a whole Netflix documentary on him. So then I started going to Yoga Works, which was like, at the time, Yoga Works was like the left bank of Paris during when all the artists, like all these iconic people who became like the icons of yoga, all taught at this place in Santa Monica. So then I would go there. I took my teacher training there during my third year of law school. And there was a guy, Steve Ross at Maha Yoga, who was doing kind of yoga with music. And it was just like, I would show up there. It would be me, Russell Simmons, David Duchovny, and 40 of the hottest women you've ever seen. I was like, okay, I'm going to keep coming back here.
This is my spot.
Yeah, it was incredible. So that really kind of got me to shift from like a Bikram type class. But what I also did was I saw one of the brilliant things that Bikram did is the same sequence every time. So people could know where they were. And I was doing a lot of Ashtanga yoga at the time, which is the same sequence.
Yep.
A lot of teachers are always changing the sequence, and it's, I was a believer, let's use the same sequence so people would know where they are, how they could grow. And so I took a lot of stuff from Bikram, but I incorporated the music into it. A lot of like what At One Yoga was for us, it was the third place. It was like, the bar gives you your social element, the fitness studio. But it was like a place where people could come. So you'd have community was the real key.
Yep.
You would have like this exercise type deal, but it'll be a place where people would come congregate and meet friends. And that's really what happened. And also yoga, we had to rebrand it. We had to like demystify it a lot. It was like no one was doing yoga. Yoga was still something that was very Indian. So we kind of packaged it. I told people we packaged yoga to white Republicans in Scottsdale, and it went great. So, that's kind of where that.
Let me ask you, the Spiritual Gangster, though. I mean, we'll get to that in a second. The concept of it, because I love that. It's a random thing. It's not random. You and I don't believe in that. You know that. But when you have the Spiritual Gangster, and now you have yoga, and now you have hip hop, that in and of itself is already changing, demystifying, so to speak. So, what did you see start to happen when you brought the brand and the yoga together? What happened at that point in your mind? The way it transpired?
What I realized was the yoga business was a hard business to scale. There was a friend of mine who started Core Power Yoga, and he grew to like 300 studios. But I realized, like, how could we take the touch points that we learned in yoga, a lot of the teachings, and a lot of it's like traditional Indian stuff, but a little more like what we did was stuff like Wayne Dyer, who was bringing to speak, and people who are just on a frequency of, there's more than enough for everyone. We live in an abundant universe, and that your thoughts really, really are outcome determinative of your reality. So, we found a way to package these teachings, and spiritual things are all about high vibration living. So how can we give these frequencies and share them with the world without having to actually teach the yoga classes? I mean, I would teach yoga classes at big events, fundraisers, and I still teach yoga on occasion. but I wanted to figure out how can we deliver this same sort of frequency without actually having to do a yoga class.
Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite part of the way Spiritual Gangster evolved is that you didn't choose it. And I have a friend of mine who says you don't get to choose your brand. Your
Yeah.
brand ends up choosing you. Right. So that happened to you, at least from my perspective, but you're evolving and changing all the time. So what is the brand now that it would be choosing you? And do you still resonate with Spiritual Gangster at the same frequency, to use your word?
That's a great question. I think for me, I'm almost on version 3.0 of my life, where Spiritual Gangster was 2.0. So I'm still involved with the brand, but there's someone else running it now. They have a new CEO who's great, but I think they've got to figure out their way and who they are and what they stand for to be relevant again. I think it's like, that's really the thing for Spiritual Gangster, is like, who are we? What do we stand for? And how do we show up in the world? And I think like the new leadership is trying to figure that out right now. So as for me, I don't know if it's completely aligned with where I'm going, but I love the brand, and it also is still very relevant. And, to me, it's a trampoline for what's next.
Do you still feel like the brand will choose you, or do you feel like, oh my gosh, I have to kind of try to control this because the first one worked so well, I've got to get this one right? Or have you released that? And
No, I think
I'm
I've
working on the
released it.
things I love.
think, where it's like, as you evolve, you can come back and look at things differently. So now I had a great call with the CEO yesterday, and I'm in a different place. So it's like, now where I'm at, how I'm looking at it, how can I help? And what do I have to offer? So, but it's not like, it's interesting. Tony Robbins says the hardest thing to lose is people to change their identity, right? So for me, I love Spiritual Gangster, but it's not my identity, right? It's a brand I created and I love, and I want to see it succeed in the world. And it also, I called my book I've just finished a book and I've been writing it for 4 years. And it's a story like The Alchemist meets Eat, Pray, Love, and is a fable. And I called it The Way of a Spiritual Gangster. So I wanted to tie it into the brand, and it has a lot of thinking of how we came up with Spiritual Gangster and what a spiritual gangster thinks like.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you said you're not in the same place as you were before, and which you're not every day you wake up. But what does that mean to you when you say that? That's a big statement I've known you for a while. So I see it from my viewpoint as a friend.
So
what does that mean to you?
I'm going to continue my story because I think the backstory can kind of shed a lot of light for the people who are listening. And I think as you evolve, you change over time, and so you find out things that kind of work for you don't work anymore. So I came back from India, and I was in this incredible enlightened state. I was like, in India, there's a difference between enlightened experiences and becoming enlightened. And enlightened is really being free of obsessive self-centric thinking. And, where's the definition? That's what I'm trying to figure. For me, it's like, if you're in a beautiful state more than 50% of the time, you're doing great. And I feel like I'm there right now.
It's great.
But when I came back from India, so my favorite band is the Grateful Dead. I love the Grateful Dead.
The shirt.
From the shirt, we did a collab with the Grateful Dead with Spiritual Gangster, and the Grateful Dead is reincarnated as Dead and Company, and they ended up getting a residency at the Sphere in Vegas. I have a good friend of mine who is #2 at the Knicks. His name's Worldwide Wes, and every time the Knicks come in town here, Wes and I go to lunch. So we're having lunch, and he's like, you want to come to the game tomorrow? I'm like, I'm going to Vegas to go to the Sphere to see Fish. He's like, well, we own the Sphere. I said, Wes, incredible. So I said, the Grateful Dead are going to be coming and play at the Sphere. I'm going to call you. So meanwhile, Wes's secretary is now on my speed dial, and I got tickets to 25 shows in the last 2 years at the Sphere.
Oh, wow.
So I basically had a residency in Vegas where I'd go in, I'd stay at the Wynn, and I would just bring different people to the Grateful Dead. And I started off and, I would have a couple drinks and I'd, put in some psychedelics and you name it. By the end of it, my behavior had just gotten way off the charts and escalated. And I came back from the first summer of that, and I was like, I got to make some changes. I'll tell you, this is so I took my rabbi. I have a great rabbi here. This guy is the fastest growing modern Orthodox congregation in the United States. And he's an incredible mentor of mine. So I took him to the Sphere with me, and and he's like, this is great. And he calls me 2 days later, and he's like, I want to meet John Mayer. I was like, awesome. So do I. So I'm in Cabo at our place in Mexico. My best friend since 6th grade built this whole place. So he's like, meet me for lunch. I meet him for lunch. And he's like, you got to meet this guy. So I'm like, okay. I start talking to this guy. He's probably like 60, hair down to his waist. And we're talking. I said, where you been? I said, oh, I just got back from Vegas. I saw Dead and Company. He's like, how was it? I said, I've seen him like 12 times. He's like, I've seen him 20 times. I'm like, what do you do? He's like, oh, I'm John Mayer's manager. I'm like, incredible. So cut to, he invites me. He invites me to Dead and Company that weekend. Sit in his box with him for the last. So I go with my buddy. First night, I have a great time. Second night, he's like, come on back. So the second night, he comes on back. He says, we'll go to the show. I go with a friend of mine from here. You know, we do too many drugs beforehand. Halfway through the show, I decided to do a little ketamine. And instead of seeing the second set, I pass out on John Mayer's manager's shoulder. I'm like, fuck. Like, this is really what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm manifesting all this incredible stuff, and it's like a sieve. It's just flowing through me.
Yeah.
So I came back. I called a couple friends of mine, and I checked myself in AA. I'm going to be sober a year coming up on Monday.
Good for you, bro. Good for you.
I went back to India after being sober and finished the last 2 weeks of this program and really like pulled the deep roots of the tree of suffering out. You know, now I lead a meditation group every day, every morning at 6 a.m. People from all over the world come on it, and I start my day doing that. I go to an AA meeting. It's really changed my life. Like, I'm able to be present, to show up. I'm in just such a different space, and I'm not suffering.
Yeah.
So, you know, everything's different for me now. But it took me, I had to get to a space of suffering and all the stuff to make the changes.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the thing. It's like when your life's going pretty well, you know, people don't change. And I've had a great life, you know, and from the outside, it's like, wow, you've done all this, you've been successful. But I really feel like my third act is like where it's all going now, because just of the state I'm in. You know, to me, what I learned in India is your state is everything. And if you're in a suffering state, all you do is create more suffering.
Yep.
And I was at a place like that at the end of Spiritual Gangster. And now I'm at a place where I'm not creating suffering. I'm in an amazing place, and I'm able to handle whether it's our daughter's cancer or creating new businesses or being there for friends when they need help. So I'm just in a completely different place. And now I'm looking at everything differently. I see opportunity everywhere versus when you're in a suffering state, even nothing really around me has changed, but my ability to see opportunity has changed tremendously. When you're suffering, you perceive lack. Lack's not a reality. It's an indication of your state.
Yeah. It's interesting because you and I have, my Robbins background. You and I know that from our friendship. That's the first thing you get beat up with when you go to a live event. You go to Date with Destiny, UPW, the Firewalk, state management is what he calls it. So when you think about the state of mind that you're in, I'm curious because there's so many things we could sit here for hours and ask so many different questions. But the state of mind that you're in right now, how would you describe that? Like, what words describe?
I'm in a beautiful state. I mean, that was what I would tell you. Magic happens all day. Coincidences, serendipities. I think of someone, they text me within 5 minutes. I'm thinking about this. It happens even better. So just like the universe, like there's a river to your life. And a lot of, like, for me, and I think for most people out there, you know, you're swimming against the current a lot of times, or you're making waves. And a lot of times just get in the river and let the river take you to where you want to go. You don't miss opportunities. Like, it'll take you back. Like John Mayer, for instance, I was in Cabo a month ago and I had my sister down there, and she's like, hey, and John Mayer was there. So I met him at the golf course. And then my sister's like, oh, I just hugged your boyfriend. I'm like, where'd he go? So he's down at the beach swimming with my friend. I walk down and I get to go in the water, and the two of my best friend and John Mayer are sitting there in the water, and I get to swim up to him and talk to him for an hour and tell him, I said, look, you bring me more joy than anyone I haven't met. But I don't get that second opportunity if I don't get sober. I'm not in a beautiful state, but like these things are always happening and falling in my lap.
I can see why the book that you've been working on has like a modern day alchemist, because the alchemist talks about those kind of serendipitous type moments. Yeah. And they're happening all the time. And most people are just missing them and not connecting the 100%. Dots. And one thing that I find very admirable about your story and your journey is even before you got sober, you're talking about you see certain things and you take action straight away. And it could look from the outside like spontaneous or impulsive, perhaps, but I'm a big proponent of kind of shrinking that delta between idea and action. And you've been acting on that and doing that so much, right?
And I think a lot of people can relate to this. So like my tendency is ready, fire, aim. But I'm also too, like, you just can give me a little bit of it and I can see the rest of it. I don't need to know
Yeah.
all the detail of how to get there. I just need to kind of say, okay, here's what I think is going to happen, whether it's creating a yoga studio or, okay, this is what I believe. And then we'll get there. And then my dad always used to say, you'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I used to get up. So I was like, what about this? So you'll figure it out. But that's really how I think about it.
And I think that I'm the same way. But the thing that I struggle with, at least right now, is everywhere is an opportunity. And I have to figure out how to filter out, where do I say no?
Yeah.
What do I say no to? Because I feel I could do that. I could do that. I get it. I see where this is going. And I just want to do everything and I can't.
And I think that's great. I think everyone can relate to that. It's the idea of like, so for me, I didn't realize the value of boundaries. And in getting sober, one of the biggest things I picked up was the value of boundaries. I thought boundaries were for wussies. What I realized is when you set your own boundaries, they're empowering, right? So also too, Michael and I talk about frequency. Everything's frequency. So as you create your frequency, now the people who are like the takers, they can't get into my frequency.
Mm.
Like I have a completely different reality. Like when your energy changes, everything coming to you is what you attract. It's coming from you. That's another thing, right? Everything that shows up in your life is a result of your karma, your decisions, and it's happening in your reality, but you can't fix it out there. The way you change it is by changing what you think about, changing what you journal about. Like another practice, every morning I wake up, I do the 5-minute journal. I've done it every day for 8 years since my mom. So I think, one of the biggest things that I can share with, everyone is the most important thing is how you start your day. So I start my day with a meditation. I start my day with journaling. I start my day with a meeting because then everything else comes from it. A lot of people have no morning routine and your day is just a free for all. And you get up and you check your phone.
Reactive all the time.
Yeah. And then but one of the greatest things is having a morning and then an evening ritual. So it's like, okay, before I start my day, I'm going to manifest what's going to happen. I write like what's going to go great that day. I'm going to talk about who I am and how I'm going to show up and what's my frequency. And then it changes because I know everything's coming from me, not to me or at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So this is awesome, man, because you and I haven't spent a lot of quality time together. Our kids go to school together, but in the summertime, thinking about what your life has transformed in the last year or so. Some of the stuff that I'm learning fresh right here in this podcast. So thank you for that. When you go to your meetings, so that's part of your sobriety. How do you, I know, knowing your belief and your story, how do you reconcile this? Because I have a lot of clients. I know myself, the way I think about it is the concept of surrender, because it's taught. When you look at the steps and you think about the concept of surrender, what does that mean?
I'll give you the greatest definition of surrender. Surrender is switching sides to the winning team. So most people think surrender is a weakness. It's like, look, you're losing. Get on the winning team. You're just aligning with a winning team. So surrender is not like giving up. Like surrender is actually getting on the winning side.
Yeah. Where'd you get that from?
Somebody said it. I don't even know,
good.
But it's great.
I've never heard that.
It's one of the definitions that really stuck with me because, you think of like high achievers, you don't surrender, you don't give up. But a lot of times if you're on the wrong path or you're causing more chaos in your life and destruction, you surrendering, like the whole concept of surrendering to God, it's really getting in alignment with what, we're all connected to a higher frequency. It's this, to me, the opposite of connections addiction. And people, myself included, people out there, we're using these different things to make up for feeling disconnected. And I think, to me, spirituality all comes from being connected. And that's what I got in India. AA is a great thing of that. Any religious deal, it's like connecting. And people want connection now more than ever. I think there's massive disconnection, especially among kids.
Sure.
So for me, it became a lot about, okay, how can I feel this connection and how can I remove this illusion of disconnection, which is, all this obsessive self-centric thinking when you feel disconnected and you're thinking about the I. And so I think, like to me, getting sober has been an incredible spiritual experience.
Yeah.
And I also think everything's vibration. I think for me, like I drank every day for 30 years. Alcohol, I went to every meal in college, all my buddies. You know, when I got sober, my wife was like, hey, I didn't even realize you had a drinking problem. All your friends drink more than you. You know, so it's like, or that I heard like, okay, you know, 1 out of every 3 people in the United States never drink. I'm like, I never knew one of these.
Yeah. Yeah. Where are those?
Yeah,
people?
exactly.
Yeah.
But you get who you kind of,
Yeah.
Right.
who are your peer.
Like attracts like.
Yeah, like attracts
Yeah.
like. And what I didn't realize, you know, for me, the first 90 days of not drinking seemed like forever. Now I'm coming up a year and it's going pretty fast. But I had to recreate my entire life because I used alcohol as a social lubricant, but also too was hurting my vibration. You cannot show up fully. You know, for me,
Yeah.
that's I was not able to show full, and now I'm like I have way more energy. I'm way more intuitive.
Yeah. I haven't had a drink in this whole year. So that's 7.5 months. It's the longest I've ever gone since I was 15 years old. There was no rock bottom moment for me. I just sort of did 30 days and said, well, I wonder if I can do 90. I wonder if I can do 6 months. And I don't know, I might do forever. But for me, you just mentioned the first 90 days. I didn't feel anything different for the first 5 months other than this sucks. Like, this is boring. Why am I depriving myself of this, that, and the other? And when I got into the beginning of month 6, suddenly I was like, oh, okay. I actually am noticing something now. I'm actually feeling something different now. I'm thinking about things differently. I have more energy. It took a long time to get through all that of 30 years of abuse, for lack of a better word, or beating yourself up, or, you know, numbing yourself, social lubricant, as you put it. So that's interesting. And I think it's important for people to listen who are going through stuff or have gone through this before, to put that out there, because everybody's journey with it is a little bit different.
Yeah.
I know people who have gotten sober who said, oh, after 30 days, like, I felt amazing. I'm like, not me, dude.
Well, and I
Terrible
think, you know, it's different for everyone. First off, and congratulations.
Thanks. Too.
And you know, that's the other thing too, is like, you don't want to compare your journey. You want to like listen, and you're going to relate to everybody. Like, that's how it works. Like, you have some, but also it's going to be different a little bit. So it's like, how do you take for you, you know? But I'm a big believer now, having been through what I've been through and experienced where I am today. You know, for me, alcohol was poison, and it didn't make things better. And I'm so grateful to be on the other side of it.
Yeah. What's a ritual or habit or routine that you have that everybody, even now, would kind of mock you or make fun of you with, but you're like a staunch believer, like, no, you guys don't understand. Like, this thing impacts you in such a positive way. And Mike and I would be like, get out of here.
So, I mean, I've been cold plunging for 9 years.
Love that. I have one in my house.
So, you know, probably 6 years ago, there's a thing called Summit Series. Wim Hof was the major interview. Yep. I got to introduce Wim Hof to 3,000 people. You know, we have 2 cold plunges in our house. So I'm a big believer. Now it's getting more mainstream. At first, people thought I was totally crazy. Yeah. Now it's becomes more mainstream. So that would be one example of it. But I'm a.
Is there a even farther into the deep end one that is not mainstream yet, that we might look at you sideways?
Something no one would know potentially.
You know, I mean, like this meditation group I lead every morning, you know, now there's sometimes 100 people, but it's only people I've invited. So there's like billionaire sports owners, there's Pulitzer Prize authors, there's Grammy Award musicians.
Would we be surprised which people are in there? Like, you wouldn't think so and so is there?
People you wouldn't think are in there. And then there's like my ski guides or friends from YPO or all these different people. So it's, you know, but that's an incredible community that I love to build, and that, you know, but every day I don't start my day till I meditate. So it's just like one of those things that it's like a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I start my day, you know, and I mean, I've done a bunch of other things, from stem cells to like, you know, taking your blood out and spinning it. And like, I'm a big believer in health and wellness and vitality. And I also use myself as a guinea pig. So I'm doing all these different things.
Yeah. I think, you know, you mentioned your mom who had health issues when you were young. I had a lot of health issues in my early years. And I think my belief is that when you are going through something like that yourself, or it's around you and ever present all the time, you get to this place where you're like, I don't care what the thing is. I'll do that thing. I'll try that thing if it has the potential to make me feel better. And you're much more open
100%.
to exploring that stuff. Like,
Well,
I've gone down every rabbit hole that I can think of. And you're talking about some things. I'm like, yep, I did that. I did that. I did that.
Yeah.
and
So I'm over here like seeking more, like, what is the other thing that I would do?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, there's like there's a friend of ours here who has what's called a drop table. And so I'm a big believer of like alignment is everything. Like if your spine is out of alignment, the biggest channels of energy run through the spine. And yoga technology is called Sushumna, which is the biggest channel. And there's Ida and Pingala, which are like to Caduceus with the medical stat where they cross at each chakra.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine has this drop table where you kind of lay down and it straps your ankles in. And there's another thing with the head harness and the table comes out and boom, and your spine goes boop, 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 boop,
Wow.
pow, like through the, so that's pretty.
That's a good one. I've never done that one.
Extreme.
Yeah.
And but it's a game changer. It'll blow through so one of the things when I was 10 years old, I was in a really bad car accident. I ruptured my spleen and I broke my ribs. At the time, because my mom was showing all these alternatives, we found a doctor who didn't remove my spleen, and my spleen actually healed itself. Well, my spine kind of grew crooked, and that's why I got into yoga, and that's why I've been doing all this stuff to like repair my body and my energy. And then I do a lot of backcountry skiing. I had a pretty bad heliski accident where I lost all the sensation in my arm for like a month. And a good friend of mine who I play golf with here was the Arizona Cardinals doctor. So I went to him. He did some x-rays. Ian, there's nothing wrong with your shoulder. Came back. He's like, let's do some neck x-rays. He calls me like 6 a.m. The next day, he's like, Ian, I think you broke your neck.
Wow.
So I was in his office that next day, ended up not breaking my neck, but I had some really bad shoulder stuff. I went and did stem cells. I did some other stuff, and I repaired myself like in 3 weeks, right? So, a lot of times when you're in pain and you're looking for ways out of it, you're open to a lot of things. Like you said, like I would have never gone to India if I wasn't in suffering.
Yeah. Good.
I would have never gotten sober if I wasn't in suffering. Right. So, pain, my Indian teachers say, everyone gets pain. Suffering's optional.
Yep.
Suffering's a choice.
Yeah. Now that I'm hearing this today, now I realize why the book hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Well, and I rewrote the entire India chapter. So
Powerful.
I added a chapter about the sphere. So it was like the book, I had to finish 2 years ago when Michael first read it. And then since then, it's almost got to incorporate me going back to India. My 6 months there, it was all.
It wouldn't have been the same.
It wouldn't have been the same. I took my whole family to Japan. There's a whole section on Japan. I added a whole section on the sphere. So it was like timing is everything.
But you know what? I still have my copy.
Yeah.
So one day, I want to say I saw the 1.0 version.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. We would call it. Maybe it was during the 2.0 version.
No, you probably saw 1.0 than now, but
yeah,
it took to get to me to where I am now to be able to get the book out with everything that I wanted it to communicate.
It's so exciting, man. Hey, question on journaling, because I know this one comes up and you talk about journaling here. What's your method? Like, how do you prompt? A lot of people out there don't know how to do it.
For people who want to start journaling, and I think it's the greatest way. So, one, you get what you think about.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way you make it even more reality is you write it down. And then if you can visualize it and see it. So there's a great, I think the easiest one is the 5-minute journal.
Yep.
Super great prompts. It's like, it's like, what are 3 great things? What are 3 things you're grateful for? So every day you're writing these gratitudes down. And I always think of more than 3 things. Mm-hmm. And then the second one is, what would be great? What would happen today that's be great? So you write about like, hey, what do you want to have happen today? Like, great podcast with Michael. Like, this would be awesome. And then the third thing is your I am affirmation. So it's, I think I'm a huge believer of you are who you say you are and you are who you think you are. So you're programming your frequency to who you want to become. And then at the end of it, there's 2 prompts. There's one is like 3 great things that happened that day. So you're kind of circling back. And a lot of times the 3 great things are something that beyond just something that you were thinking was going to happen. And then at the end, there's always something like, what did I learn today? So you're always thinking about, okay, what did I learn today? And you're writing it down. And then beyond that, I also do I did the artist way, which is great.
Oh, Julia Cameron, my favorite.
Amazing. So Julia it's a great way to this year of a friend of mine who's a famous artist. He led the Artist Way course. It really helped me unlock my creativity, realize how important play is and fun. I think that's another big thing that people who are wanting to be spiritual or even people who are successful in life forget about the value of play and fun. And to me, that's like one of my cornerstones. Like, it's got to be fun and you got to play.
Yeah. The only thing about Julia's philosophy, I don't know if she's changed it, but when she came out with the original version of the Artist's Way, is morning notes, right? You take them, write them and throw them away. I keep all my writings. I never throw my writings out.
You need to throw them away. And there's a page where you go back and you can highlight them. So morning pages are great.
Yep.
Part of the thing, you wake up and you write 3 minutes freehand of, anything you want. And what you realize is a lot of stuff comes out of clues for you when you just start writing, and you got to write 3 pages.
Yeah.
So that's a great way. Another thing that I do is I write my wins. So like I'll keep a wins journal. So anytime anything good happens, I'll write them. And the way it works, if you start noticing these great things happening, one, you're changing your neural pathways, so you're noticing more of them, and then you're going to start attracting more of them.
What's a win? Like, how big? What would make the win bracket? Give me an example.
I mean, there's so many easy wins. Like,
I woke up today's a win. I mean, but how simple do you get?
I get super simple, right? Like easy, great flight. My kids love sports cars. My 13-year-old is having a bar mitzvah coming up. So, one of my wins is I have a bunch of friends with fancy cars. I was telling you, I've been driving a brand new Ferrari around. I let my kids drive it yesterday. Like, that's a win. Like, seeing how happy my son
is. Definitely a win for the kid.
Oh, yeah.
It's a win for the kid. But, wins can be very, very, very simple. And I think it's like, ran into a friend at coffee who I wasn't expecting to see. There's a win.
Yeah.
There are all these little wins that are happening all the time for you. I walk into this place and I meet the guy who owns it, and he helps me out doing 100 different things I'm looking to do.
Yeah.
But like miracles are happening all the time.
Right.
And if you start to realize that, there's a flow of your life, and if you start to realize that the flow of the life is taking you to where you want to go, or even more importantly, where you're supposed to be. So you start to realize all the wins. Now for me, I get 30, 40, 50 wins a day that you're just like, wow.
And you're in that place now. So tell everybody what's next and what you're working on right now and what you're excited about, what's energizing you before we get out of here.
Amazing. So I just finished my book, and it's been 4 years. I'm launching it in November. I'm speaking at a summit called Eudaimonia, which are all the best health and wellness people, authors, healers. So I'm doing that in Palm Beach. Then I was telling Michael, I'm going to do 52 podcasts in the next year. So I'm going to...
It's commitment, man.
Get it out there.
Love it.
A friend of mine just bought the Sanctuary Resort here, which is the nicest resort in Scottsdale. So I'm partnering with them to build the nicest wellness center in the United States. So that's going to be a 2-year project, and it's going to bring in all this stuff from wellness to biohacking to community wellness, of really all the stuff I've learned in my last 20 years of life, and building the mothership for this.
Yeah.
And then I've also there's a thing called Of Course. And the idea behind Of Course is most people say, when something great happens to them, they're unbelievable. And I was like, why when someone says something great happens to them, why does
it have to be a surprise?
Why is the language unbelievable? So at first it was totally believable. So then you say, oh, totally believable. And then became Of Course, because there's an expectancy that things are going to work out for your favor. So I've created this group called Of Course. It's similar to Tony Robbins' Platinum Group. And we're taking people who come for the year, and we help them evolve, professionally, personally, in their relationships, but it really teaching people how to live life in a non-suffering state where anything becomes possible.
Yeah.
You have limitless energy. Miracles show up all the time, and you're in flow. A lot of the other things, I look at people, and a lot of people's their life is off course. If you just get one of those F's out of the way, you're back out of course. So it's learning to live life in this place where you're seeing the miracles, and you realize that everything's happening for you.
Awesome. So the name of the book has not changed, though.
The name of the book is called The Way of a Spirit.
That's never changed, though.
That's never. I mean, I've had a bunch of different titles for that, but that's the title we landed on.
All right, I'm going to hold you to this, my man. Okay. I know that you're a committed guy. When you make goals, you're what's written is real guy too. But I'm looking forward to that, because going for 1.0, and I haven't read the 3.0 or 4.0 version, but to compare it. So, first of all, Dude, you blew me away today.
What a story.
This is not what I expected at all. To be honest, I've done 1 or 2 interviews with Ian before where we just talked about life. He helped me kick off New Year's actually in Patrick's studio. He was piped in. We had Henry Kellen was live in studio with me. He's a big I am guy. And to go from that, which by the way was January of 22, if you think about that, it was literally the kickoff of that year. Think about January of 22 to now and where you're at in your life. So night and day. In fact, maybe that's something we'll do with our cast when we get this live is I can even show you a side by side of the things that very similar. Not a lot's changed when it comes to your philosophies, failure frequency, and some of the things that you teach and preach, but the way that you live in the state of mind that you're in, completely different. So I just want to say heartfelt thank you for coming on today and meet my friend, my longtime friend, your new friend, Scott Leese. So everyone signing off for today's What's Your Story? Scott Leese, Mike Lindstrom. We want to thank our guest, Ian. And I don't know about you, but I would take a lot of notes from this and take some action and put this into your life. Thank you so much.